on the Clarity Act, that literally shouldn't surprise you one bit. The Clarity Act markup bill came in, finally was released yesterday, and tomorrow's the vote, and everyone basically thought it was a done deal until a new sabotage on the Clarity Act in the middle of the night was launched, when we woke up to the news that the Democrats, and I'm not like trying to make this partisan, this is literally what happened. The Democrats submitted 100 amendments to the Clarity Act, and 40 of those were written by Elizabeth Warren herself. But before we get into the doom and gloom and break down what these amendments actually are, we got a more optimistic update from Brian Armstrong this morning, reporting on the ground from Washington, D.C. So I'll play that, and then we'll break down what this amendment is and whether it'll even pass at this point. So here's Brian Armstrong.
Hey everyone, Brian Armstrong here. I'm back in the Senate office building in DC in anticipation of crypto market structure legislation going to markup on Thursday, which would be a historic moment, and the energy here is just palpable. So first off, just want to say a big thank you to the Senate and of course their staff, who have been putting in countless hours to get this bill to a good place. I don't think it's ever been in a more strong position and more bipartisan position. And I also want to thank the 3.7 million Stand With Crypto advocates who have made their voices heard to get this legislation to where it is today. Now, there were a number of open issues that have now made incredible progress. Stablecoin rewards was a big one. I think there was a healthy compromise there, brokered by Senators Tillis and also Brooks. And it was a good compromise because both sides left a little bit unhappy, but at least we got to a place that we can all live with. And then, of course, the other issues, which I mentioned in my X post back in January that were problematic in the prior draft, things like DeFi and tokenized equities and CFTC authority, these have all been improved and fixed from our point of view. And so the bill is stronger than ever. It's bipartisan. It's ready to go to markup. And I'm incredibly bullish on what this could mean for American innovation and ordinary Americans benefiting from this technology. So we'll keep you updated and keep fighting the good fight. Thanks.
Okay, so like I said, that's the more optimistic view of what is going on today. Again, they did have until today to get these amendments through. They're literally right now talking about the amendments, whether they're going to get added to the markup bill, and then the vote is tomorrow. So there's still some time on the clock, but it is definitely running very, very short here. And I think this next portion that is covered in the Bitcoin Magazine article will really kind of show you what the stakes are and will it even get passed at this point. This is where it does get a little tricky, a little technical. But anyways, the headline is Senate crypto bill faces over 100 amendments ahead of Thursday markup. Of course, the Senate crypto bill faces a high stakes markup this Thursday as lawmakers debate 100+ amendments that could determine the future of U.S. digital asset regulations. Obviously, we all know we got the Senate Banking Committee markup bill late on, what was that, Tuesday morning or Monday night. It came out around midnight, and we covered it yesterday. Apparently, all of us were looking at it. We all basically got a Claude summary. And then this morning, again, late last night and this morning, we wake up to 100+ new amendments coming in. And I do have a screenshot of most of these, and some of them are a little interesting, to say the least. Okay, so anyways, Senate banking committees have filed more than 100 proposed amendments to the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, according to political reporting. The panel is set to convene on Thursday to do the long-awaited markup vote. The committee is scheduled today, so they're currently, I would say, in session right now. It started this morning at 10:30 a.m., and I'm guessing, I haven't seen anything before I went live, so I'm guessing they're still deliberating right now on whether these amendments are going to get added, whether this is going to get voted on tomorrow. Anyways, of course, the flood of filings follow a 309-page release, and Senator Elizabeth Warren leads the opposition push, submitting more than 40 amendments alone, with the bulk of proposed changes coming from the Democratic members of the Banking Committee. Again, but as we've been trying to say for a long time on the show, it is not the Democratic Party, or any party at this point, is not a monolithic entity. there are some good Democrats out there that are supporting the Clarity Act, that are supporting, quote, digital assets. But we have seen a very worrying trend that for the longest time, the Democrats obviously do not want to see, quote, digital asset clarity happening, as Nico likes to make the cases, because they really want to make a push for the CBDC. Well, there is some interesting amendments that I will cover in a minute. Anyways, the wave of filings, and this is where it gets interesting, all right? This is where the conversation of will it even get past the vote tomorrow, or maybe even worse, will it even go up for a vote tomorrow, considering the amount of amendments, is this does remind us of what happened in January when they ended the markup session because 137 amendments at that time came in and the session was canceled. Obviously, the resistance stopped the bill. That's when we got the infamous, I guess, video at this point of Brian Armstrong basically saying, hey, this bill as it stands, we are not going to back it. I'd rather have no bill than a bad bill. That was January. 137 amendments came in basically right before the clock, struck midnight, almost literally and figuratively. And now we are seeing something similar. Maybe it's not 137, but it's 100 plus amendments. So there is still, I guess, a very real possibility of there not even being a vote tomorrow, considering, or rather in consideration of what will happen today or what is happening currently as we speak. Now, here is a little bit of a broad breakdown. Again, I did find a couple screenshots of what is actually these amendments actually entail, but here it is. At the center of the dispute is how the bill handles stablecoin yield products. Again, the stablecoin yield has been the biggest push here. The banks are absolutely terrified of stablecoin yield. And from a Bitcoiner's perspective, it's like, we don't even care about stablecoin yield. Like, how are we a risk to you guys? You guys have all the money. We're just trying to, and I guess by we, it's not even me, but the stablecoin guys, it's like, we're just trying to give back to the people that are holding stablecoins. Maybe you guys from the banking perspective, banking lobbying group, the banks themselves, maybe you guys should give more interest to your clients here. Maybe competition will be good for the customer, but no, they want the regulatory moat. Anyways, the banking groups argue such crypto products, aka the stablecoin yields, threaten traditional deposit bases, and crypto firms are countering that reward programs support liquidity and customer activity without functioning as bank deposits. Now, going further, we did cover this yesterday. Excuse me. Hold on. The American Bankers Association sent more than 8,000 letters to Senate offices since last Friday targeting the stablecoin yield compromise. That compromise, of course, reached after months of negotiation, prohibits stablecoin issues from paying interest or yield to users who hold tokens passively, while preserving exceptions for rewards tied to genuine platform transactions and payment activity. We covered that yesterday. Anyways, there's obviously this huge conversation about the ethics of the bill and ethics provisions. And this is where one of the other kind of broader strokes comes in. Senator Chris Van Hollen introduced a proposal that would prohibit senior government officials and their families from owning or promoting crypto-related businesses, a demand Democrats say is non-negotiable given President Trump's close ties to the crypto industry. Remember, I think it was Friday of last week, or maybe it was Thursday, I was trolling and saying that now that Elizabeth Warren is trying to fight the Clarity Act, maybe I'm a little more bullish on the Clarity Act. And that's exactly what she said. She basically said, if this bill does not stop the president from profiting off the crypto industry, then it's not worth the paper that is drafted on or the paper that the bill was written on. So we're seeing that the stablecoin yield is still one of the big points of contention. And now it seems like the non-negotiable is basically barring, at least from here, they're going to say the president, but barring Trump from profiting off the crypto industry, which honestly, doesn't even sound that bad, to be honest. I mean, I was trolling yesterday. Was that yesterday? I think it was yesterday saying, Elizabeth Warren is saying that Trump has only made $1.4 billion off crypto. I think the number's higher and closer to like $3 billion. At least that's what I've seen. That's the reporting that I've seen. Anyways, that's the broad strokes here. Let's look at the screenshot that's going around about the amendments to the Clarity Act of 2025. Now, I'm not going to read all of them. Some of them are just like grammar and wording and you know, whatever. We really are going to hone in on these. I think these are the yellow boxes of what Senator Elizabeth Warren amendments are. And there's two in particular that I think stick out. The other ones are a little, I guess, more boring. It doesn't make the headlines. It's not the big news. It's not the spicy news here. But the very first one is, in fact, probably the spiciest one. And then there's actually one in here from Elizabeth Warren that I do actually agree with, which, you know, hot take. But anyways, let's start with the first one. And here we go. The first one. Oh, I can't zoom in more. All right. Anyways, first one under the yellow box. It is, and you can see up here, sponsor and co-sponsor. So it goes 66. I'm guessing this is on, or this is just number 66. And it goes, this amendment would require the Fed, OCC, and the FDIC to release of bank supervisory information regarding Jeff Epstein and his co-conspirators. So she's doing an amendment because she doesn't want people to know the bank statements of Jeff Epstein and co-conspirators. And I'm pretty sure that was like not even a part of the conversation here. And she just so happens to inject that into this conversation. I don't know. Sounds a little fishy to me. Anyways, the next one is this amendment would exempt certain software developers identified in the White House Digital Assets Report and address vulnerabilities to protect national security. The third one, this amendment would set uniform expectations for the monitoring of blockchains to provide more information for law enforcement. And then, of course, you know, define financial institutions under anti-money laundering, yada, some DeFi stuff. Those ones, these ones are a little more, I would say, vanilla here. The one that I do agree with here, which I am a little surprised to see, this is one I could actually stand behind, is number 44 here, the second one under this box, and it goes, this amendment would prohibit digital asset custodians from rehypothecating customer assets. Honestly, that's a good one. That's a great one. I'm totally behind that one. That one is great. The other two, it's like, okay, so she wants to add an amendment so that they can, you know, get more information from us using the blockchain. I'm guessing using chain analysis of some sort. And then the first one is like, whoa, hey, yo, Elizabeth Warren, where'd this one come from? What are we talking about here? This one just came out of nowhere. And then there is one more. It's not from Senator Elizabeth Warren, but it is from Senator Haggerty, and it goes right here, 108, prohibits the issuance of a central bank digital currency. So it's not all bad, and some of these are more benign than others, but that first one is like the biggest, like, whoa, hey, what are we talking about here? Where'd that one come from? So as you can tell, and I have another attack. We are seeing a more coordinated effort, not just from the Senate Democrats on the banking committee, but there is one more attack that I do want to cover real quick, which I did cover yesterday on yesterday's show as one of the big kind of sticking points on this idea of protecting open source developers. Well, it looks like we are seeing an attack on that as well. But before I get to that, Nico, are we surprised with this last minute 100 amendments added to the Clarity Act? And are we surprised by that very first one? Like, what's going on?
I mean, I read you guys exactly what Elizabeth Warren said on yesterday's show. Like, this is not surprising whatsoever. I mean, if you guys watched yesterday's show, none of this should be surprising to you. Like, I told you guys very specifically why this is not monolithic. And again, I don't want to make this partisan, but it is what it is. Elizabeth Warren.
they made it partisan.
Elizabeth Warren is the head of the Senate Banking Committee. I actually had an interesting conversation with Arthur Hayes this morning. We're going to be releasing that tonight. But his take on it was very unique on how he approached it, right? He basically said, Arthur Hayes told me on the show, he told me that the Democrats weren't necessarily against the whole crypto industry. What happened was that their poster boy, again, I'm quoting Arthur Hayes here, their poster boy, Sam Bankman-Fried, was donating to a lot of the Democrats. And when the whole FTX explosion happened, essentially, they got a lot of pie in their face. And in order to kind of salvage their political, perspectives and their political viewpoint, it was the first time I heard this angle.
That is interesting.
It was very fascinating to me. In order for them to salvage like their political optics, like how people look at them, essentially what happened was that they did a 180. So they started attacking the crypto industry, the Bitcoin industry, because their poster boy,
they got their hand cut in
who
the
was donating specifically, not only to Democrats, but mostly to Democrats, ended up being a scammer, right? And ended up hurting a lot of people. So they did this kind of like 180 to kind of save face. That was the first time I ever heard that perspective.
Yes,
and I think it's a very good perspective. Now, what is my perspective on this? The same perspective that I told you on yesterday's show, which is I think fundamentally, if you look at Elizabeth Warren and if you look at what her vision of the future of money is, her vision of the future of money are central bank digital currencies, right? So if you combine those two things, right? The fact that the Democrats' poster boy in the crypto industry ended up being a scammer, and then they have to save face, and then them wanting a central bank digital currency, Elizabeth Warren is on tape saying this. If you combine those two things, listen, and this is where the Trump administration really kind of sabotaged themselves a little bit. It doesn't help that Trump was shilling meme coins, because it's not that what Trump did was bad. I would say he's done more good for the entire industry than bad. Like the fact that he got Ross Ulbricht free, the fact that he signed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Executive Order, the fact that, he is attempting to end Operation Choke Point 2.0. I know a lot of people in the industry are saying it's not 100% done. But it's definitely better than where we were before from a regulatory perspective, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is, no, Opti, this is not surprising whatsoever. We literally talked about this yesterday, and I literally read you guys the letter that she wrote against this. So it doesn't surprise me. I still think that this thing is going to pass. It's up to 70. It's up to 70% on the.
No, I think it dropped. I think it's down to 60. I'm pretty sure it dropped overnight. Let me see. Let me go get it. But I'm almost positive it dropped.
I think they have the votes. I think they have enough
votes.
It's
at 62% right now.
I think they have enough votes. Remember, they only need 7 Democratic senators. They don't need the majority, right? And Chuck Schumer, I believe, did signal that, and Chuck Schumer is he's the lead for the Senate Democrats. He did say specifically that, hey, look, he supports it. Right?
Yeah. I saw Rizzo post about it, but I didn't see who it was.
Compromises. Okay. So just Elizabeth, remember, Elizabeth.
I mean,
Warren,
wait, hold on. If it was Chuck Schumer who said this, the quote I saw, he's like, "We are not going to stop or delay the Clarity Act." Was that Chuck Schumer? Okay,
what I heard was positive things, and you guys have to like zoom out and look at the bigger picture. If you look at the Genius Act. Remember, Elizabeth Warren lost her mind when it came to the Genius Act. She was 100% against it as well, right? So it doesn't matter that Elizabeth Warren could be saying those things. What ultimately matters is, do the Republicans have those 7 Democratic votes? And are all the Republicans going to sign for the bill, right? So you don't need the vast majority of Democrats to reach across the aisle. You just need a portion of them to reach across the aisle to support the bill. You need that 60 vote threshold. That's all you need. If you pass that 60 vote threshold, the Clarity Act passes. Another thing that I wanted to say that Arthur Hayes told me was, he told me something very similar that what Kent told me, which was he doesn't really believe it matters. He's like, look, if you're a Bitcoin entrepreneur in the United States, which is exactly what Kent said, this is actually good for you. But, from a regulatory perspective and all that stuff. But is it going to stop Bitcoin? No. Is it going to stop number go up? No. Why? Because they're going to print more money. And one of the things that, and I tried to get more information out of Arthur, and I was like, and I asked him a very simple question. I was like, so are you trying to tell me that Bitcoin's price is just completely correlated to, the amount of money they printed? And he didn't even give context. He was just like, yes. And I kind of just like nodded my head and I was like, is that your answer? And he's like, yeah. And then he started, and he just started laughing and he just started to like go down deeper down the rabbit hole. So if you're a Bitcoin entrepreneur in the United States and you're looking to build a Bitcoin business, is this bill important for you? Yes. Could this potentially be bullish from a number go up perspective? Because again, it gives clarity to institutions in the United States. Yes. Will this stop number go up? No. And again, he went down the historical perspective. He's like, Nico, the biggest number go ups that Bitcoin has had were under Obama. They were under Trump. They were under Biden. Like, it doesn't matter who's president. The only thing that matters is, are governments going to continue to debase the currency and print money? If the answer is yes, then nothing stops this train. Bitcoin's going to go up, right? So you just said it like that. And that was such a great way, again. And if you're hearing it from multiple entrepreneurs, Kent from SazMining, successful entrepreneurs, Kent from SazMining, Arthur Hayes, who founded one of the largest, Bitcoin/crypto exchanges in the world, right? And they're both saying the same thing. I mean, nothing stops this train, bro. Nothing stops this train. That's my take.
Nico, I know I always do this where I bring up old stuff on the show. But remember when we were doing the initial talks about President Trump, and I did that one show. I was like, it doesn't matter who becomes president. They're going to print money, and you low-key freaked out on me. Man, it feels good. We all knew this was going to happen eventually. We were going to get Nico to this side of the aisle, guys. It took us a while, but we collectively did it as a team here.
I don't like your vocabulary. I don't like your vocabulary on those words.
Remember Optigate, guys. I just want to say, remember Optigate 1 and 2.
I don't like your vocabulary that you use during those words. Vocab number 1 is, we got Nico on this side of the aisle.
We got him.
What is this, like politics? Like, hell no.
It's high school.
We got Nico on our side, better said, on our side of the football. Okay, I would appreciate that.
Guys, I brainwashed him slowly. That's what I'm saying.
The other thing that you said is collectively.
Yeah, I meant me and the chat. Okay, all right.
So collectively and other side of the aisle.
Okay.
Opti,
dude, you're doing.
What is going on?
Bro, you're mainstream mediating me right now.
What is going on?
The gaslighting is insane
let's
right
go
now.
Back to the signal. Let's go back to the signal. Enough banter. Let's go back to the signal. What's going on?
Oh yeah. I almost forgot. I'm sorry. I was gloating a little bit. Okay, so there is more. There is more to this. Here we go. So I told you that yesterday we covered the section in the Clarity Act that there was a lot of contention on whether this was actually going to help open source developers or not. There's still a debate on this. But what we have seen since we covered the show, and thank you to our boys over at TFTC, they covered this and they are literally attacking that exact provision. So we have the Fraternal Order of Police, the largest law enforcement organization in the United States with over 382,000 members, is opposing a key provision of the Clarity Act. In a letter to Senate Banking Committee Chairman Tim Scott and Ranking Member Elizabeth Warren, there she comes up again, the FOP National President Patrick Yos said the organization, quote, strongly opposes Section 604 of the bill, which would exempt non-controlling developers and providers from being classified as money transmitting businesses. The FOP argues this change would strip prosecutors and law enforcement of the statutes used to track and take down criminals using digital assets to commit crimes and would make it even easier for criminal organizations to profit from illegal activity. This is exactly the provision that matters most for open source developers. The same section the FOP wants removed is the one that would protect developers from being prosecuted for what their users do with their software without it. Building privacy tools, non-custodial wallets, or mixing software could make a developer criminally liable under money transmission laws, regardless of whether they ever touch a user's fund. The FOP says it supports the right to trade digital assets. It just wants to make sure law enforcement keeps the ability to prosecute the people who build the tools those assets move through. That distinction is the entire fight. So again, we brought this up We brought this up as being one of the big contentions amongst the Bitcoin industry. We kind of discuss the verbiage of this, whether this would help the Samurai Wallet devs that are currently in jail or any other current crypto Bitcoin prosecution. And the basis of it is, at least in the wording, it seemed that as long as you don't know that the users are criminally using your product, or rather, if you don't know that people are using your products in a criminal way, then you are not liable. Though the wording was a little vague. And again, it wouldn't retroactively free the Samurai Wallet devs or the Tornado Cash guys or Bitcoin Fog, et cetera, et cetera. It wouldn't retroactively free Bitcoin developers or crypto developers that already are in trouble with the law in regards to privacy and knowing, that, or rather marketing to criminals and for criminal activity. So now we're seeing that there's even more contention on that point, basically trying to wipe it out completely. So the sabotage, we're not, being hyperbolic here in terms of the Clarity Act. Some of the stuff that we were talking about that seemed to be very good coming out of the Clarity Act are now actively being attacked. And it seems like with 100 more amendments, there's even more, less clarity in if the Clarity Act will even pass and get voted on, or the markup portion of it will get out of the Senate Banking Committee tomorrow. So I think we said it on Monday or Tuesday that we are going to probably have news all week in regards to the Clarity Act. And it's just a story that keeps giving. So
it's the story. It's what we're going to cover. Is it important? Yes, 100%. Again, if you have a Bitcoin business in the United States, I think it is very important from a number go up perspective. I think it is important. I think it will be bullish news if it gets passed. But as Kent said, and as Arthur Hayes told me this morning, again, does Bitcoin need the Clarity Act? No. Does Bitcoin need the Clarity Act for number go up? No, absolutely not. I would even go, and I said this on yesterday's show, I would even say that the United States needs Bitcoin more than Bitcoin needs the United States. That's what I would say. So again, and we also, because the piece of legislation is so large, and the Democrats, I'm sure that all the amendments that they put in there are, landmines. Are you trying to say that Elizabeth Warren isn't putting language in there that's saying, oh, you don't have a right to self-custody? Oh, these developers that are developing open source software aren't going to be liable if, a criminal uses them? Are you trying to tell me that they're not trying to sabotage it using your words? Of course they're going to try to sabotage it. But again, I think the clarity, no pun intended, the clarity here was Arthur's take. Arthur's take was a very unique take. I've never heard that take before, which was, you have to go back in history. Who was the poster boy for the Democratic Party as it related to crypto? It was Sam Bankman-Fried. And that blew the F up. So what did they do? They did a 180 to, again, protect their reputations, right? So that was very eye-opening to me in the sense, because for me, I was always approaching it from no, they just want a central bank digital currency. But if you look at it from that angle, that perhaps maybe isn't entirely accurate. They could, again, just be saving face and saving their skins because of how many people got hurt with FTX, and it happened under a Democrat administration, right?
Well, and he gave them the majority of his money. And
he gave them
what was it? Altruistic, what was it?
Altruism, whatever.
Altruistic investing or something like that.
So if you look at it from that angle and that perspective, it makes perfect sense, man. So look, and I know I see some people in the comments are like, oh, what are these folks going to talk about today? This is the news. This is what's going on in the Bitcoin world today. This Clarity Act is a big deal, right? It's just not a big deal in the reasons that if you take self-custody of your Bitcoin, and if you're thinking 10, 20 years from now, and you really believe in the sovereign individual thesis where you can literally just pick up and leave to a more favorable jurisdiction that treats you best, like El Salvador, you know what? this shouldn't matter to you at all. Bitcoin doesn't need the Clarity Act. If Bitcoin needed regulation for it to exist, it would have been regulated out of existence by now, right? And another thing also too, and I've tweeted this out before, I think governments fundamentally think that they are going to be able to change Bitcoin, where in reality, over time, I think it's going to be Bitcoin that changes governments. And then this goes back to Max Kaiser's very famous quote that I say all the time: you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And the reason it changes you is because it changes your perspective and it changes your incentives. And ultimately, nobody is better than their incentives. No human being on planet Earth is better than their incentives. Humanity runs on incentives. Human nature runs on incentives. And again, if you look at their system, it's a system based on coercion. You need to use the US dollar. The US dollar is the official currency of the United States of America. You are, by law, forced to use it, right? If you look at Bitcoin, it's an incentive-driven currency. People adopt Bitcoin not because there's a law, not because there's a regulation, not because Elizabeth Warren, not because of Donald Trump, not because of anyone. You adopt it literally because it's better money. It's a better savings technology. That is literally why you adopt Bitcoin, right? So I just want to be clear here, because you got to divide the two things. Is the Clarity Act important? Yes. Does Bitcoin need the Clarity Act for it to succeed? No. Those two things could be true at the same time. And I think it's very important for you to differentiate the two, right? But anyways, I'm curious, Opti, I want to get your take on Arthur's comment, because I've never heard that comment before.
Yeah, no, I honestly haven't heard that comment, but it does make perfect sense. And I have been saying for a while that we are still just barely getting rid of the stench of FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. Like, it seems to be old news to us, but if you talk to random normal people about Bitcoin or crypto, if you bring that up, I've experienced this. One of the first things they always say is like, oh yeah, who was that? You know, the guy with the weird hair that scammed everyone in crypto, you know, and you're like SBF, and they're like, yeah, that guy. And so like, we still have that bad narrative from him. So it does make a lot of sense to me. Like that does kind of, you know, connect a lot of dots.
And I'm here just seeing the X feed here, just breaking. It just seems like this is on Fox Business right now. Brian Armstrong, there's been a compromise on the Clarity Act, says Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong. We're ready to support a markup later this week, mirroring exactly what the video that you played earlier. Yep. So it looks like, you know, if you, again, you have to really pay attention to, you know, the people that are really in the thick of this. And also too, bro, like, I want to vent a little bit. I'm going to vent a little bit. Like, it's so annoying. And I don't think that the country was originally structured this way, but it's so annoying that for you to pass a piece of legislation, it needs to be this like 3,000 page bill. Like, that's crazy to me.
Well, it's 300.
I know, but I'm being hyperbolic, bro. Could you, like, if they just passed the bill on, yes, we will protect the right to self-custody. Yes, we won't go after open source developers. Like, that will do two things. It removes the complexity. It removes the need to compromise and do all these things. It makes it very simple, but most importantly, it exposes incentives. It tells you exactly who you need to vote out of office, because it's very clear that they don't want you taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. It makes it very clear that they're not in support of open source developers, which, by the way, is supposed to be protected by the First Amendment. Like if you look at developing code, like, what are you doing? That's a form of speech, right? That's literally a form of speech, which is supposed to be protected, right? It's not like they're writing software that is purposely designed to commit crimes. Like, no, not at all. It's like they developed a piece of software, and a small percentage of those people use that piece of software to commit crimes. Like, you can't convince me of that. So Again, if you're attacking that for one reason and one reason only. You just don't want competition. Like, that's literally what it comes down to. And you know, one of the things that I do like about what's happened recently is the exposed incentive of the banks. They are so worried. They were so worried that these crypto exchanges were going to offer interest, rewards, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. They were so worried that people were going to do that. And that tells me everything you need to know, because right now, if you have money in your bank, the bank is literally using that money to make money off of your money. And they pay you a laughable amount. It's like an insulting amount of interest. It's like 0.0004%, right? It's like, and you see it in your bank account. It's like, oh, your interest, you got 3 cents this year. You got 3 cents this month. It's like, bro, like, come on now.
Generational wealth.
And then here comes innovation. Here comes innovation that's basically saying, no, actually, we're going to provide a better product, a better service. And the big banks are like, no, we cannot let that happen. Like, that is so anti-American. That is so anti-free market that it tells you a lot about the banks. It tells you a lot about how they think. It tells you a lot about how they operate. Right? And no one should deserve that type of power. No one should deserve that type of power, especially the power over money, right? The power over money. And we've seen how this has been weaponized. Look at the Canadian truckers protest. What was the first thing that they did? The government did. They froze people's bank accounts. And if you look at it from all angles, right? We're supposed to pay taxes. You got to follow the law, pay your taxes. But then they tax you through currency debasement, which doesn't get talked enough about. And then not only that, they can freeze the money that you spend your time and energy working for at a flick of a switch. I've always said a bank account, it's a multi-sig between you have one key, the government has another key, and the bank has another key, right? That's not a very good multi-sig, right? So yeah, man, like, I mean, this is just a whole debacle. It's a whole piece of drama. Personally, at this point, dude, like, as a Bitcoin entrepreneur in the United States, and I really do want this industry to thrive in the United States, and I think ultimately that will be bullish for the price. I do want this thing to pass. Not, again, because I think Bitcoin needs it. Bitcoin doesn't need anybody. That's the whole point. But because I think it will provide, no pun intended, regulatory clarity in the United States. Opti, I gotta get our guest.
Yeah. No worries. Okay, guys. So we do, as Nico just said, we are changing things up. We got a guest live in here. So I'm going to handle the numbers real quick while Nico, kisses babies and shakes hands. I'll handle the numbers, and then I'm going to swap out Nico, and our guest from Leiden is live in the studio. So that's today's show. I'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bitcoin Well Infinite. If you're a serious Bitcoin buyer, you've probably hit the same wall. Most platforms make you give up custody just to play by the rules. Bitcoin Well Infinite fixes that. They're North America's only publicly traded, non-custodial OTC desk listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, which means transparent operations and zero counterparty risk.
You buy Bitcoin, you take immediate control, period. For trades over $50,000, you get a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, competitive spread starting at 1%, and immediate delivery straight to your own wallet. No custody risk, no withdrawal fees, just institutional grade execution with full asset control. If you want to buy Bitcoin the right way, book a free consultation at bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email infinite@bitcoinwell.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them down on paper. Paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on Stampseed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with zero penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitKey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you already know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named BitKey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's BITKEY.world with the code SIMPLY. Yo, we're here back in the studio and we got a special guest joining us in the flesh today. We got Adam Reeves, co-founder and CEO of Ledin. How you doing, man?
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me in. It's so great to be here.
Thanks for joining us, bro. I appreciate you making the journey to the Simply studio. I think you're the fourth IRL guest to join us in here.
It's so nice to do things in real life, you know, with so much virtual stuff. It's awesome to be here. You have a beautiful studio. I'm so impressed. So thanks for hosting me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you coming in. But yeah, dude, we had a lot of things that we were talking about. Love to get your takes. Before I get into the numbers, guys, I want to get your take as a Bitcoin entrepreneur.
A long time coming, right? So I think what we see is, you know, as we try to bring more capital into the space, like our business is really matching, right? So we often say, like, as a lending business, we have two customers. We have the capital side that gives us the dollars or provides the dollars, and then we have the borrower side, which is thousands of Bitcoiners around the world. And what's really tricky is a lot of people want to jump into the space, but they need to know how the rules work. And so what we're seeing is there's just like a mountain, a huge wave of capital on the sidelines that's ready to come in as soon as there's clarity, no pun intended, on how they can participate in the space. And I think we're just going to see a lot better things down the road coming when this gets passed.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I'll say too, Adam, is like one of the perspectives that I'm hearing is basically like from the protocol level, from Bitcoin's level, Bitcoin doesn't really need clarity. But if you're building a Bitcoin business, specifically in the United States, if you're a Bitcoin entrepreneur in the United States, it is very, very important. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think, you know, we're asking a lot of businesses to come in that have established businesses, right? You know, a bank that wants to participate, they need to follow the rules, because if they don't, they lose the 99% of their other business that's working well. So to ask them to come in and risk that is a big deal.
Yeah,
so
100%. And then this gives them, no pun intended, I keep saying this over and over again. It's in the name, right? This gives them regulatory clarity of what's going to happen in the industry.
Exactly right.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, let's jump into today's numbers. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $79,330. Decline from all-time high. If you're buying Bitcoin right now, you're getting a 37% discount. And the market capitalization of Bitcoin is currently at 1.59 trillion. And the block height of Bitcoin is 949,242 at the time of recording. So let's get into today's numbers. I think Opti, you have the video lined up. I believe this is a video of Michael Saylor it's a CoinDesk interview. So shout out to CoinDesk for recording this interview. I'll play you guys. It's about a 2-minute clip. I don't know if we'll go through the whole thing, but let's check out the latest of what Michael Saylor has to say.
In terms of leading up to the earnings call and then knowing that, I think anyone that's been observing the stock, that selling Bitcoin is something that probably could have happened, would have happened eventually, but announcing it, were you surprised how well, one, Bitcoin's held up, and two, the common stocks held up?
I didn't expect Bitcoin to, the price of Bitcoin to change at all on that announcement. The truth is, if we were to fund all of our dividends exclusively by selling Bitcoin over the next year, we would buy 21 Bitcoin for every 1 Bitcoin we sold. And so it's no different than buying 20 Bitcoin and selling no Bitcoin, buying 21 Bitcoin and selling 1 Bitcoin. So it's kind of a big nothing burger from an economic point of view. And then from a market point of view, the Bitcoin...
I'll end it with that because it gives us a lot to talk about. And I have Adam in the studio again, co-founder and CEO of Ledin, to talk about this. So big change up, Adam. So first of all, we know that Saylor built this entire brand on never sell your Bitcoin. I love how I could see Ledin being threaded into this, but it was basically like never sell your Bitcoin. And then recently, I believe it was either on Monday or the Monday previous, he basically changed the argument, which is like, try not to sell your Bitcoin when you need to, which to me is fascinating. And this is what I was talking about on the show, because like ultimately we've all been through that cycle as Bitcoiners. Like initially we're all so hardcore committed to the idea of like, I'm never going to sell my Bitcoin no matter what. And then you go through the cycles and then you inevitably end up having to sell a little bit because you get overexposed or you put too much of your net worth into Bitcoin and you have to sell some to pay the bills, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems like Michael Saylor went through the same evolution that the rest of us did. He just has a much larger profile. So I do agree with him when he says on that podcast that it was a bit of a nothing burger, because the reality is, as he was saying, like the amount of Bitcoin that strategy is buying, like they're buying the entire supply. So what's your take on those two things? First, Saylor's change of opinion, I would say. And then second, the amount of Bitcoin that strategy is buying.
Yeah, look, I think first, it's really difficult to generate yield on Bitcoin, right? And so there's a ton of institutions trying to figure that out right now, and a lot of very risky ways to do it. But one of the less risky ways is to write structured contracts, right? So the idea of, a call strategy where you're agreeing to sell Bitcoin at a price that's higher than the current market price in the future. And that's a method that strategy, again, no pun intended, may be using to generate yield. So by default, you effectively have to be okay with the idea of selling Bitcoin at a higher price. But again, the idea is you don't intend to do that. You intend to rebuy that. So I think that goes back to how does he generate a yield on that? Look, I think the back to the question on the amount of Bitcoin they own, the interesting thing about Bitcoin is anyone can do whatever they want with it. So if he's the highest buyer, he will own more Bitcoin, right? The job of everyone else is to bid more than he can so they can own more Bitcoin. So I don't think we can control that. I think things are going to play out with market dynamics.
Absolutely, 100%. And what is your take on the amount of Bitcoin that strategy is buying? Because they are buying, like, just their stretch product alone, right, is buying more Bitcoin than the active amount of Bitcoin being mined on a weekly basis. I think the natural question is, like, why isn't the price going up if they're buying all this Bitcoin?
Look, I think, what they're doing right now, and just to kind of talk about, Michael and his genius is, anyone who's great at raising capital is incredible at a narrative, right? And so he has this whole narrative of digital credit. I mean, to turn it back to Ledin, we've been doing Bitcoin back loans for 8 years, right? And Stretch is effectively the capital behind Bitcoin. It's effectively a Bitcoin back loan. It's just there's some bit more complications as to how it sits within the capital stack. So I think, they're just finding another strategy to buy as much as they can. And this is a new product that they've invented to try to tap a new source of capital.
I love that you brought up Ledin, right? And I'll walk you through my Ledin story initially. So I was initially in contact with Mauricio, and I decided to change from one provider to the other. And then initially, you always have that hesitation, right? Because you are sending your Bitcoin to a platform, And one of the first things that I realized, like after, you know, I started a loan with you guys and I went through the whole process is, and I felt kind of embarrassed, but basically what I realized was that there was no monthly payments. So like, and I was used to a provider where like every day at like the month, you know, they would take, you know, the interest out of, you know, out of your bank account. And that's how you'd keep your loan. And one of the things that completely caught me off guard, I was like, wait, there's no monthly pay. Like where I was so confused. I was like, where do you pay? Like there's no monthly payments here. Like what's going on? And then that's really when it snapped in my mind how powerful this product was if you're responsible, of course, right? Like you don't want to go 100% of your Bitcoin stack and put it into a loan because you find yourself in a, you know, potentially getting margin called. But again, if you are responsible, and I'm sure a lot of your customers approach it that way, this is a very powerful tool where you don't have, you're not in a position where you can benefit from your Bitcoin, but you don't actually have to sell it. So could you talk a little bit about the philosophy behind designing it like that very unique approach? Because it is very unique, Adam, and it's very, very powerful. Like it helped me build up my business. It helped me build up a lot of things that I wanted to do. But at the same time, I was in positions like, dude, I don't want to sell this bit. Like it's painful when you sell Bitcoin. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Look, I mean, the idea when we created the Bitcoin backed loan is people need cash to cover real world expenses and they don't want to sell their Bitcoin. So what we didn't want to do is turn around and say, okay, we just gave you cash. Now give us back some cash. That didn't make sense to us. So what we tried to do is work in the background to structure something so that you could defer that as long as possible and, you know, figure out the right capital sources that allow for that. Now, how we do that is we have a whole bunch of staggered maturities in the background. So not everyone is borrowing the exact same amount at the exact same time. So we've got this nice, huge portfolio of different borrowers with different needs that allows us to compensate for that.
I love that's like literally one of my most favorite features of you guys. And then one of the things that I also discovered recently with the drawdown is the auto top feature, which is genius, right? And it's genius for a couple of reasons. Again, I'm learning these things not by reading it, but like by actually experiencing it myself. With the recent drawdown, of course, what do you do as a Bitcoiner? You get, you know, ultra paranoid, and you're like, okay, I'm going to make sure that my margin calls $15,000, right? But what's really cool about the auto top up feature is you're not necessarily putting your Bitcoin into the collateral. You're putting your Bitcoin into an account. And you could actually withdraw that Bitcoin back into your custody if you don't want, if you don't want to leave it on the platform. But simultaneously, if there's a case where there is extra volatility, it automatically takes it from the auto top up account to collateralize the loan, which I absolutely love that. And it was super useful. I used it with this recent drawdown, and it was really, really cool that you guys designed something like that.
Yeah, look, what's interesting is every single one of our clients that had auto top up enabled in the February drawdown didn't have any liquidations. So we had like 100% success rate with people using that. And yeah, to illustrate it is you could just over collateralize your loan even further to prevent from that. But then there's a bit more restrictions on how that Bitcoin can come in and out. We have some guidelines that we have to abide by. So to your point, when you have it in the auto top-up account, it's flexible. If you do want to draw it out later, you can. But again, it protects you in that time of need.
Absolutely, 100%. And again, learn these with experience. Now, another thing also too, Adam, and I think I saw this in Mauricio's presentation in Plan B in El Salvador, which was he basically showed a case study of one of your clients. Of course, it was anonymous and, you know, no one knows the name and all that stuff. But he showed the case study, and it was fascinating to me is the amount of Bitcoin that was left on the platform in order to fulfill the obligations of the loan. Over time, the amount of Bitcoin actually went down, and it actually tracked like the price cycle. So you could see that during the bull market, right, the amount of Bitcoin was a little bit lower. And then this person was very responsible. When the bear market hit, they just put more collateral. And then when the bull market started again, the amount of collateral actually went lower than when they initiated the loan, which brings me to that third feature I want to talk about, which is if your loan is over collateralized over a certain percentage, you do allow people to withdraw Bitcoin out of that Bitcoin collateralized loan.
That's exactly right. Like our goal is to hold as little of your Bitcoin as necessary, right? Our requirements are our capital providers' requirements. And so we're working with them continuously to lower that. But to the extent we can reduce that, we're always trying. And so what we don't want to do is like, we also want at the same time manage and protect you from liquidation, right? So it's like, okay, if the Bitcoin price spikes for a day, that's why we have some time period on it to allow it to stabilize and make sure we're balancing that.
Absolutely. Do you have any like crazy stories? I've asked Mauricio the same question, and he gave me some crazy stories as well. Do you have any crazy stories or use cases of people using their products to, again, perhaps, elevate their lifestyle or upgrade their business, or, again, perhaps you're in a crunch where you need some cash, right? But you don't want to be put in a position where you want to sell your Bitcoin. Do you have any case studies that particularly resonated with you that just popped out and you're like, oh my God, that's crazy?
My one case study that I always go to, and this is not one, this is for thousands of people that we've helped out. And it's, we're sitting here in Miami, a city and country with massive privilege, but keep in mind, Bitcoin's a global asset. And we have people all over the world that we get to interact with. And a lot of clients have told us, especially in Latin America, that this is the first loan they've ever been approved for, right? And that's just like, you can use that for whatever you want. Hopefully you're doing it, so you're using the proceeds for something useful, maybe starting a business, paying for school, maybe helping a family member out with something medical. But the idea that, something happened that you couldn't do before and now it enables things in real life is so powerful.
Absolutely. No, and I agree with that. And I love that you guys service Latin America, because traditionally you wouldn't be able to do that with the traditional financial system, right? Like the traditional financial system is very strict, right? You need like, hey, what's your credit rating, right? Where do you live, right? And the fact that you guys are able to, service clients in Latin America, specifically I'm originally from, or my parents are originally from Venezuela, right? So I have that background. I understand it, is incredibly powerful, because those are some of the people that need it the most, right? Like, as you said, like, in the United States and specifically in Europe as well, right? You do, like, whether you guys realize it or not, we are so privileged. We live in a country that has a relatively stable fiat currency. There's no capital controls yet, but it's relatively stable, right? But in Latin American countries, that's not always the case, specifically with their local currencies. There's capital controls. There's, again, the inflation rate could be double digits some months. It's really, really crazy. So the fact that you guys offer those products to those people, I think is incredibly important. And I think the minimum loan is $500 as well, right?
That's right. Yeah. And like, back to the point of serving many countries. So we just did this ABS, right? We did the first ever asset-backed securitization that hit investment grade status as a bond. So, to put it in simple terms, this is like the same way credit cards, auto loans, real estate is financed in most of the global financial system. And most of the times that this happens, you package up borrowers by region. And, no surprise, those that are American borrowers tend to have higher credit status as it fits into the traditional financial system. We were told by our the groups that worked on this product with us that this was the first ever time that we're able to take borrowers from many different countries. We had 30 different countries in the bond, a $200 million offering, and get a universal credit rating for it. So it stopped this like double standard where it's like, okay, you're American, great, here's your financial terms. You're not American, sorry, it's a little bit lower. And now we have the same, because as we all know, Bitcoin is the same to everybody globally. It doesn't care where you are. And that's the unlock.
Absolutely. That's the unlock. And again, it really seems like you guys developed this product specifically for Bitcoiners, right?
Absolutely.
And you guys approached it from being Bitcoiners. Could you talk to me a little bit about the early days? What was that like? Because so this morning, just to give you perspective why I'm asking you this question, right? So I had Arthur Hayes on the podcast, and I was asking him like, hey, what were the early days like of launching that? He's like, look, for the first 2 years, we didn't make any money. Like, it was horrible. As a Bitcoin entrepreneur myself, right? Like, for the first couple of years, it was dark. Like, you're not getting any traction. You're like, why am I doing this? There's a lot of uncertainty, and you kind of need that mental fortitude to stick it through. What was it like for you guys? Because it wasn't just the early years that you guys had to endure, but with the whole Celsius debacle, like, I mean, that must have been crazy for your part of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on all day. I'll try to keep it fairly concise. But look, I mean, in the early days, I mean, we played out the borrower and lender phenomenon really well, because, I grew up in Canada. I was able to play, okay, this is what the banks need. This is what the pension funds need. I was coming from a background in structured finance, specifically for the energy sector. So I was used to structuring, fairly large capital allocations. And Mauricio played the role of the Bitcoiner growing up in Venezuela. For those that don't know, we met at university together in Canada, and we came together first as friends and then secondary as business partners. And we played that out. Mauricio would say, okay, this is what I need to is a Bitcoin, or this is my needs. And I'd say, well, you can't make them too good or we're not going to get the capital for it. So a loan is a balance, and we played that out well. And, we launched in Canada. First, we were Canada only. And then quickly, again, we realized, why are we limiting this product to Canada? We should be global. And, some of the funny stories, just like hacking the initial use cases, we knew the best way to develop client trust was to get people money really, really fast, right? It's like, you're sending us your Bitcoin. That's super scary. We're a startup. We're new. And we used to say, it's cool to have a startup restaurant, but people don't really like startup banks, right? It's like, no, I'd rather deal with the bank that's I know has been there for 200 years and they still have the money, and like all of this is really important. So instead we said, let's make sure we can get money people super fast, but we're stuck with the banking system, which takes 3 days. So what we did was we had bank accounts at every single major Canadian bank, and all the banks are on four corners. So what we used to do is go to the one we had our reserves at, and literally walk it across the street to the bank. So if Nico, you banked at Scotiabank, we would take $5,000 out from my bank at TD and walk it across and put it in your account in seconds. And people say, how did you move the money that fast? Well, we have the perfect payment system. It's super automated. And that was the amazing part, right? Because the Bitcoin's coming in seconds over the internet, and the money is just literally physically being transferred. And that's what we did. That's how we growth hacked for the initial year. Of course, now things are completely different.
Of course, but yeah. That's such a great story, man. That's it. And again, no one kind of knows like how the sausage is made behind the scenes, but that is so fascinating and interesting. But again, it's those early years that always fascinate me with entrepreneurs, because those are really the years where like you have to get over your self-doubt. You have to be 100% confident in what you're doing. And there's still, the odds are still stacked against you. Like there's still no guarantee that you're going to succeed. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be right back just after the break in just a bit. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy, HIVE has quadrupled its global Bitcoin mining footprint and channels that same scale into high performance compute, where their AI cloud is now ranked #1 in the world for network performance. At HIVE, you've got dual engines, Bitcoin and AI humming, roaring, accelerating in unison. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable digital infrastructure. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money, it's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail, and hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. Yo, we're back, and we got the co-founder and CEO of Ledn in the studio joining us today. We got Adam Reeds in the house. Adam, I want to go through some more news that's been breaking. I think this is absolutely huge from the kind of institutional side. So breaking, this is a Bitcoin Magazine article. Shout out to our friends over there. 11.77 trillion brokerage giant Charles Schwab launches spot Bitcoin trading platform. And here's the official post from Charles Schwab Corp. Schwab crypto accounts are now being rolled out to retail clients. Starting today, the first group of clients can trade Bitcoin and Ethereum at Schwab right alongside their other investments. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is, Adam, again, it seems like the institutions are here. Right. TradFi is here. And as you know, when we got into this, man, we were villainized, like we were treated as the others. Right. So let's talk. This is a perfect segue to talk about the bond that you guys were able to achieve. Right. Could you talk about how unique that was, the fact that you guys were first, how difficult that was to achieve, and what were some of the difficulties that you guys had to overcome?
Yeah, no, thank you. So I think first off, I just want to mention like why we did this, right? Like why bother going through all the rigmarole that's required to structure something, get it rated in this piece. And it really comes down to our projection of need for capital. So I love the comparison of Bitcoin lending with real estate. And the thought is that 60% of US homes have a mortgage on them. Right. And so if you extrapolate that to Bitcoin, we just said earlier that the market cap of Bitcoin today is almost 1.6 trillion. 60% of that, is $1 trillion, right? So that's a lot of capital, and not even close, far exceeds the amount of dollar capital that's in the space today, right? We all know, Tether is a major institutional lender in the space, but when you add up all the players and especially look at the consumer lending segment, it's only about 3 or 4 billion today. So we might go from 3 or 4 billion to $1 trillion, and we thought, where can we get that amount of dollar capital, right? That just doesn't exist today in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So what we did was we looked around and said, how are other types of assets financed? How is real estate financed? How is auto loans? How is credit cards? And the answer was the asset-backed securitization market, which is a fancy word for the bond market and how that all fits in. And so we went down a path to said, what if we did this with Bitcoin? Like how would it work? And what we've tried to do is like, if you're going to do something new and hard, my philosophy is like, try to just change one variable at a time. So the variable we're changing, of course, is instead of real estate, replace it with Bitcoin, but try to keep a lot of the other things the same. And so that was the path we endeavored on. We started on, most of last year, in February, we kicked it off. We interviewed different rating agencies. S&P Global was the one we chose to work with. They were the most ahead on, Bitcoin at the time. And, they put us through the ringer as they should, right? That's their job, is to look at all of our processes and work through the pieces of it. And I would say the reason we were successful in getting it done was all of the data we had, because we've been lending against Bitcoin for 8 years, and the product we created has 0 losses, right? So that's incredible for a lending business. Most lending businesses, someone takes a car loan, they don't pay it back, there's a percentage. And so that was like a really hard thing for people to get their head around, right? It's like, you've never lost money on this product. Like, how's that work? Where's your reserve ratio? And so that was the path we went on. But, to get to the punchline, for those that don't know, we did a $200 million offering, and it was the first ever Bitcoin related product to achieve investment grade status. So yeah, thank you.
That's amazing, man. So, again, so what is the significance of what you just said? Because that is a big effing deal.
So when it comes to ratings for these type of securitizations, it's kind of like investment grade or nothing else. And so most institutions, if it's a pension fund or a reinsurance company, they can't buy non-investment grade paper, meaning like they can't allocate any capital to it. So you can't access the $1 trillion that are saying we needed. So we knew that we were on this kind of like pass or fail. It wasn't like a typical report card where it's like, if the teacher's really nice, they move you to the next grade and you can still advance. This is like, you have to get the best rating, or it's like all or nothing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it was so huge when I saw that. Like, it's like, man, we're being accepted. We're being accepted. We're being let in the big boys room, man.
Exactly.
Where before we were kind of sidelined. So that what do you see, Adam, is like your vision on just the general Bitcoin industry as a whole, and the Bitcoin collateralized loan industry as well?
Yeah, I think with every business making decision, it's always like risk reward, right? So before, the market cap of Bitcoin was fairly small, and it's like, okay, there's some news out there that's not positive, and there's this perceived, we've all learned that that's no longer the case, like AML risk. And now it's like, wait a second, here's an asset that there's actually way more transparency on. There's way less fraud because you can't fake Bitcoin, right? Whether you have the UTXO or you don't. So there's just a whole bunch of attributes that makes it way better. And it's big enough now that, let's be like honest, like most businesses, like, can I make money off this? And so I think now it's at the scale where it's like, wow, if I enable this, I can make a lot of money. And the risk level is at a point where you can get it approved without fear of things going the other way. So that's what's tipped the scales.
That's amazing, man. And what do you see? Where do you see the future of just this entire industry 5 years from now?
Look, I think it's going to be table stakes to have Bitcoin at every major institution. I think we're going to be talking about like what variation of it, but like whether you have it or not. I think a lot of things that have slowed us down is standardization, right? So what was like, we did over 50 roadshow meetings, which means like these in-person meetings that we have to sell the bond and educate people. And it's a lot of work to say, okay, well, you can store Bitcoin in this way, or like, we use Fidelity as the custodian, but there's like, 50 different custodians. Like, the financial system is really set up to have, like, I say this in like not to be too negative, but kind of have someone else to blame for everything, right? And that's can be effective, because then it doesn't, you don't have to think too much about certain decisions, right? It's okay, well, who's the custodian? Well, they're rated by this group. Okay, great. Well, they rated them, then I can trust them, and then that fits together. Who's the accountant? No, it's KPMG, right? And so we have all these like checks and balances, but we haven't done enough of that in the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? We need a bunch of standardization to happen. And the Clarity Act, that's going to be another one. It's okay, Clarity Act approved, boom. So we have all these checks. Once we run through that, it's easier to participate, because we don't have to think about 50 things to make one decision.
Absolutely. So Adam, before we close up, for anyone who's not familiar with Ledn at this point, could you walk through what the onboarding process is like? So if you go to, of course, you guys got to use the code, you get 0.25% off your first loan. But if you go to ledn.io today, right? What is the process? Like, walk us A through Z. What is someone going to experience for the first time?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. So super simple. So just like any web platform you've signed up for. So, email, password, MFA, we just added YubiKey support. So we want your account to be super secure. Once we have your authentication, we do KYC. All of our clients were required to do that. We can't access Great Capital without that, but it's super quick. We use a piece of software for that allows that to happen in 2 minutes. And then we can fund you typically same day, right? So if you're depositing Bitcoin and, and you have everything ready, and long as, everything comes together, we can disperse funds really, really quickly. So things can happen in hours.
Absolutely, man. And I've experienced this myself. I went through the initial, because you always do for initial platform. I went through the process and it was seamless. And, you send the Bitcoin to the platform, you collateralize the loan, you pick, of course, the amount of the loan that you want. I have to emphasize this many, many times. You have to be responsible, right? You could be a degen, but I don't recommend that, right? Be responsible in terms of the percentage of your Bitcoin stack that you do want to take out a loan against. And then again, you send the Bitcoin as collateral, and then Ledn sends you the money within 24 to 48 hours has been my experience.
Yeah, exactly. And to clarify a little bit about that piece, so yeah, you're going to specify how much you want to borrow in fiat or how much Bitcoin you want to put up as collateral. Again, choose a size that's right for your needs and risk profile. And then you can receive, if you want to receive the proceeds super fast, you can select stable coins or put in your banking information and we can wire to an account. We can also wire to many different currencies. So sometimes people say, I'm in Mexico, can you send me pesos? Of course we can. So there's a lot of different flexibility in how you receive.
Amazing, amazing. Is there a point where if I take out a loan, you and Mauricio show up at my house with a bag of cash?
You know what? For maybe that's a feature we should add in.
I think it would just be a great piece of content. But of course, I'm joking. All of this is automated, guys, through the banking system. But my marketing brain is just spinning. Anyways, I do want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is a special edition of Simply Bitcoin. Of course, we got Adam Reeds in the house, co-founder and CEO of Ledn. Guys, go check out Ledn. You know the link down in the video/podcast description. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Before we hop off, I do want to give a shout out to, of course, our sponsor, Mine Disrupt. It's going to be the largest Bitcoin mining conference in the world. You definitely don't want to miss it. Use the promo code SimplyBitcoin. Again, SimplyBitcoin to get 10% off. All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.